Qin Xian sent the tutorial of Thunder Knife to Han Sen, and Han Sen started to teach her. Half an hour was a short amount of time. After explaining some techniques and demonstrating, Han Sen asked Qin Xian to imitate him twice. And then half an hour was gone. How should I call you? After the class, Qin Xian felt even more respectful toward Han Senator. Even what he said casually made her feel very inspired. She was more and more convinced that her opponent must be a master. However, she could not guess which military mogul he was. Call me soldier, Han Sen said casually. He did not want to expose his identity to anyone, and he was not interested in knowing who she was either. In Han Sen's eyes, this wasn't no more than a transaction. Then I will call you coach in the future? Qin Xian firmly believed that he was a master, so she understood that he would like to keep his identity confidential. That'll do as well. Han Sen added Qin Xian as a friend and left the virtual campus. He had many new understandings after the fight and would practice more on his own. After Han Sen left, Qin Xian recalled every single detail that Han Sen had taught her and started to practice repeatedly. The more she practiced, the more respect she had for Han Senator. Just a simple technique could have so many variations. Using Thunder Knife to trade for a class like that, Qin Xian felt it was such a good deal. In addition, Qin Xian even felt this person was cultivating her on purpose. Otherwise, how would she be able to get the class from such a master using just Thunder Knife? There was no way that Qin Xian could imagine that the master in her eyes was Han Sen, who she had bullied 1,000,000 times before. In addition, the incredible skills were just a small technique in the basics of Dongxian Sutra. Han Sen himself had only scratched the surface, and what he had taught her was even less than that. Han Sen, you have been training and studying quite hard, the fat squad leader said with a smile to Han Sen, who had just come back from the training hall. It doesn't hurt to learn more when I am young, Han Sen said, licking his lips. Han Sen, what is the use of reading those ancient words? If you have time, you should train more. Vice Squad Leader Lu Mingliang pointed to the pile of ancient language textbooks on Han Sen's desk. Han Sen had purchased these books for a grand price before he came to Daphne. Many of the books he could not find in ordinary libraries. Many hyper-geno arts are adapted from ancient martial arts, so it doesn't hurt to learn the ancient language, replied Han Sen. Lu Mingliang did not continue the topic but said, Han Sen, since you graduated with the rank of major, you should be a sacred blood aristocrat? Yes, didn't I tell you that before? Han Sen looked at Lu Mingliang, not sure why he would bring this up. This might be your opportunity then. Lu Mingliang said with a sigh. Many comrades died on Daphne this time, including guards, the squad leaders of the Warframe Department, and the demolition team. When we return, many grassroots officers will be promoted for sure. Although you are not in the army for a long time, you graduated from a renowned academy and have the title of Sacred Blood Aristocrat. Therefore, you will definitely have your chance. Although veterans like us are majors like you, we do not have the title or background to be promoted. Han Sen was enlightened. Lu Mingliang did make a good point. This time, Daphne did lose a lot of crew members. Even if the upper level would like to recruit more people, they would not be able to make such a large recruitment immediately. After all, a careful background check must be conducted before one could enter Daphne, so not many soldiers could be recruited here. It was almost inevitable that some original crew members would be promoted, which was Han Sen's opportunity. If he could become a squad leader of a less busy department such as the Warframe team, he would be able to have more time to study or go to God's sanctuary. In a quiet corner, Han Sen called Ji Yanran to ask about this matter. I was just about to tell you this. The upper level will promote some grassroots officers among the original crew members of Daphne. However, I don't want you to become the squad leader of other teams, but prefer if you could be my guard, said Ji Yanran. Guard? So I will be able to follow you anywhere. I love it. Han Sen was overjoyed. Being Ji Yanran's guard, he would have more time to spend with her alone. In addition, as long as she agreed, he would have infinite free time, which was much better than a squad leader. Ji Yanran blushed and said, You are full of dirty thoughts. How's that? Han Sen glanced at her fair skin underneath her sleepwear and felt an urge to go to her bed right away. Ji Yanran rolled her eyes at him and said seriously, Although I would like you to be my guard, there are things that I could not choose. I have recommended you as much as I could, but all I earned was an opportunity for you. Whether or not you could end up as my guard is totally up to you. I do not feel we have a great chance, but it is worth a try. If it doesn't work, I will then try to recommend you as the squad leader of the Warframe department. What opportunity?
Han Sen asked.
I am given 2 guards. One of them is already decided and could not be changed. For the other guard, there are 4 candidates including you. I am not allowed to decide which one of you is to become the guard, so you must fight it out, said Ji Yanran. Will my opponents be surpassers? Han Sen blinked and asked. Not really, they are all evolvers, but one of them is very impressive, Ji Yanran said with a wry smile. How impressive? Han Sen frowned and asked. Same as you. He is a major. However, he is a 40-year-old veteran who has spent about 2 decades in the military. Ji Yanran paused and continued. You have seen Li Mingtang using that hyper-geno art, which cost him 60 years to practice. I will not say anything more than the fact that your opponent had already succeeded in practicing Super Diamond Body. He was serving in Blue Blood Special Force previously and was called the Tiger of Blue Blood. Of course, his strength was more than just Super Diamond Body. He is almost always among the top 3 evolvers of the military contest, while Wang Ho was not even top 100. Ji Yanran looked quite troubled. This is somewhat troublesome, but it does not mean there is no chance to beat him. Han Sen thought about it and asked, when is the fight? It is not a fight. The 4 of you will all attend the military contest. Whoever with the highest rank will become my guard. Unfortunately, there is no way to fake it in the military contest. You have to rely on your own strength, Ji Yanran lamented. If she was able to do something, Ji Yanran would definitely let Han Sen win. That's good. I will have a lot of time until then, Han Sen smiled and said. Hanging up, Han Sen started to think how he could win. Li Mingtang had once said that one needed to have at least 120 in fitness to break his Super Diamond Body. However, even Han Sen used all he got, he would only be able to approach 100, which was still far from the threshold. In addition, Han Sen did not have any strong Beast Soul weapons, so he could not depend on a weapon either. In addition, he was forbidden to enter God's sanctuary, so there was no way he could increase his Geno points. Han Sen gave it a lot of thought, and the only possible way was to break the Super Diamond Body from within. Han Sen did not believe that someone who had just succeeded in practicing Super Diamond Body could strengthen their inner organs as much as their bones and muscles. As long as he could send his force into their inner organs, he would be able to break their bodies. Han Sen was especially good at this kind of force. The Yin Force and Yin Yang Blast could achieve that. To be more confident, Han Sen decided to spend more time to practice Yin Yang Blast, especially the Yin Force which could penetrate one's body. Currently, when Han Sen used the Yin Force, he could penetrate a steel plate 3 inches thick and send 60% of his force to the object behind it. This meant he would be able to send enough force to one's inner organs through one's skin and muscles. However, the conversion rate of 60% was still a bit low. Han Sen wished that he could increase that rates to more than 90% and preferably 95% before the contest. Otherwise, with Han Sen's fitness of a little less than 100, even if he could use the Yin Force effectively, he might not be able to hurt his opponent. After all, his opponent would be someone with a fitness level over 100. It was actually harder to practice the Yin Force than the Yang Force. Also, there was almost no convenient way to practice it. Han Sen had to spend a lot of time and used all his brain power. Although Han Sen did not spend all his time on it, he had been practicing the Yin Force for several years. And even after that, his conversion rate was just about 60%, which showed how difficult it was to practice the Yin Force. During the amount of time that Daphne traveled back to the Alliance, Han Sen was practicing the Yin Force every chance he got. He did not log into the virtual camp again. Qin Xian was frequently in the camp, wishing to meet Han Sen again and learn some things from him. Unfortunately, she never did and was disappointed every time. Before Daphne reached the human space harbor, a warship sent from the Alliance came to it and investigated everybody separately. This time, Daphne had suffered a great loss, including 2 of the most renowned professors studying crystallizer civilization. Many researchers also died on the planet. The accident was quite severe. Fortunately, the 2 advanced crystals that Han Sen brought back was submitted by Ji Yanran, which was credited by the Alliance. Coupled with the great influence of her family, Ji Yanran was not punished. After all, she was not responsible for the excavation work. After returning to the Alliance, the soldiers on Daphne eventually gained some freedom. Although Daphne would not be on a mission in a short amount of time, the soldiers were not excused. The good news was that they could enter God's sanctuary as they wished. It was more than a month until the military contest started. Han Sen planned to use this amount of time to increase his Geno points as much as possible so that he would have a bigger chance at the contest. Returning to Goddess Shelter again, Han Sen found that young Monli had done a good job managing the shelter. Many people had already resided in the shelter, which brought Han Sen more money than he thought. Each month, he had an income of more than 10 million. The region was not quite populated, so he would earn even more if there were more people. Zhu Ting had got his hands on Treading Cloud a long time ago. Because Han Sen was absent from God's sanctuary for a long time, it was the first chance Zhu Ting could have given the Hyper Geno art to him. After receiving Treading Cloud, Han Sen went a hunt. He still asked Zero to stay in Goddess Shelter. Since she could not gain Geno points from eating meat and could not use beast souls either, there was no point for her to go hunting. She could stay in the shelter and defend it when there were creatures attacking the shelter. Han Sen went deep into the glaciers and snow mountains alone. On his way, Han Sen was almost traveling at full speed and bypassed all the creatures he saw. He wanted to kill creatures that were so small that they could be finished in 1 to 2 days in order to increase his Geno points rapidly. However, few creatures were of a small size in this area. Having traveled 2 to 3 days in the glaciers and snow mountains, Han Sen eventually saw a smaller creature that he had never eaten before. It was a creature the size of a cat. It looked like a ferret covered in shiny purple fur, eating red fruits growing on a bush at the foot of a snow mountain. Having never seen this kind of creature, Han Sen did not dare to be careless. Making sure there was no other creatures around him, he sneaked to the purple ferret quietly. However, when he was still 100 feet from the purple ferret, it suddenly noticed him. Glancing at him with its purple eyes, it was not scared away, but threw itself at Han Sen fiercely.
Han Sen's heart leapt.
The speed of the ferret was incredibly fast. It came to Han Sen's face in just a moment. A sacred blood creature. Han Sen was both surprised and overjoyed. The creature's speed was even faster than himself, so there was no doubt that it was a sacred blood creature of Second God's Sanctuary. Using both Heresy Mantra and Overload, Han Sen stepped out to dodge the purple ferret's attack by a hair. At the same time, he punched at the tiny body of the purple ferret. In the air, the purple ferret twisted its body in an incredible angle and dodged Han Sen's punch, continuing to strike at Han Sen. Having no time to move around, Han Sen was scratched by the ferret. The armor coming with the Fairy Queen was not effective at all. If Han Sen did not avoid the attack, that scratch would gut him. An injury like this was not enough to make Han Sen cringe. He was still very calm, using his footwork to fight the ferret. The strength of the creature was completely beyond Han Sen's imagination. What was worse was that his skin scratched started to bleed purple blood. Obviously, he was poisoned. Since he had practiced Jade Skin, Han Sen was immune to most poisons. After he made the first breakthrough, normal poisons were completely useless on him. The fact that the toxins of this purple ferret were effective on him showed how strong the creature was. Luckily, Jade Skin was still effective. After the purple blood flowed for a while, his blood turned red and the injury started to heal. This purple ferret was incredibly fast and nimble. It was even able to shift its directions in the air. Punching a dozen times, Han Sen missed every single time. Luckily, Han Sen's effort in practicing his footwork was not a waste. Relying on incredible kiting skills, he managed to dodge the lightning snap of the purple ferret each and every time. A man and a ferret were fighting in the snow. The tiny body of the ferret was at an absolute advantage. The animal attacked Han Sen continuously in a fierce way. Unfortunately, most creatures were not that smart like humans. The sacred blood purple ferret had amazing fitness and talent in fighting, but all it was relying on was its instinct. Han Sen used his footwork to its limits. It seemed that he was at a disadvantage, but in fact, he had already had everything under control. Tempting and intimidating, he had forced the purple ferret into a spot that he desired. Dongxian Sutra was not only effective in footwork, but also in fistfight. It was somewhat similar to Sprocket Sword that Wang Ho used. However, Sprocket Sword was applied to the collaboration between two swords, while the application of Dongxian Sutra was wider and cleverer. Each and every part of one's body could be used to play a part in attacks. However, the more methods there were, the harder it was to calculate the moves in a comprehensive way. Han Sen had just started to practice, so he was naturally unable to reach a profound level. Calculating his punches alone proved hard to him. When other people fought, physical energy was consumed. However, when Han Sen fought, his brain power was consumed more. With one punch, he needed to consider how to make the next dozen or several dozen punches, how to place himself, how his opponent would react and cope, and how to react to his opponent's reaction, etc. With one punch made, Han Sen had in fact seen the results following a dozen punches instead of this one punch alone. Of course, he couldn't achieve 100% accuracy. After all, as he was calculating, his opponent was as well. And his opponent might not necessarily follow his calculation. This was only the way to go when the two parties were balanced in strength. If one was able to beat the other based on strength alone, there was no need to consume so much brain power. The more ideal way was still to overpower the opponent. Han Sen had no other way at present. After all, most of the enemies he encountered were stronger than him, so there was no way to beat his enemies with power. The poor sacred blood purple ferret was not intelligent enough to tell Han Sen's hidden calculation. Although it was much faster than him, it was gradually forced into a hopeless state. Very soon, Han Sen threw his fist, which was the color of jade, at the purple ferret, which was between its two moves, and lost its ability to dodge. Naturally, it was hit by Han Sen's fist. Boom! The Yin force penetrated the sacred blood purple ferret's body. Its tiny body flew 50 feet away and fell after crushing a large chunk of glacier. When Han Sen was about to chase after it, it suddenly rolled around on the ground and ran away in the opposite direction. Obviously, this sacred blood purple ferret was severely injured, coughing blood from time to time and slowing down. There was no way Han Sen would let it go. He quickly ran toward the purple ferret. As he was slower than the ferret, he could not catch it momentarily. Because it was injured, the purple ferrets could not get rid of Han Sen either, coughing blood from time to time. If they kept going, even if Han Sen could not catch it, it would die from the injury. Han Sen initially thought he would be able to kill the sacred blood purple ferret in a short amount of time, but he did not realize how strong his fitness was. After chasing for 4 days and 4 nights without any shut-eye, the purple ferrets eventually stopped when Han Sen was about to give up himself. Dragging his tired body next to the purple ferret, Han Sen found it was about to stop breathing. Sacred blood creature ghost pod ferret killed. Beast soul of sacred blood ghost pod ferret gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points randomly. Han Sen had heard the voice that hadn't sounded in a long time. At the same time, the beast soul of a ghost pod ferret was added to his mind. Han Sen was in no mood to check the beast soul of the ghost pod ferret, sitting on the snow immediately and then lying down. Having chased after the ghost pod ferrets for 4 days and nights without any rest, Han Sen was tired out himself. All he was relying on was his resolution and jade skin. Because he was afraid to attract the attention of other creatures, Han Sen did not dare to use the golden growler mount either. After all, the golden growler was only a super mount from First God's Sanctuary. At its biggest state, it might be able to catch up with the ghost pod ferret. However, when it was smaller, its speed would be much worse, so it would not really serve purpose. That was why Han Sen had to chase the ferret on foot. At this point, he did not even want to lift a finger. Having lied on the snow for 2 to 3 hours, Han Sen still felt sore all over, not wanting to stand up. "Hey, friend, are you okay? You could not sleep here. You will die like this." Seeing him from afar, a tall woman pushed Han Sen, who was lying on the snow, and said. Han Sen was indeed too tired. Seeing she was not trying to steal the body of the ferret on the ground, he knew she did not mean him harm, so he did not stand up and just said in a laid-back manner, "Don't mind me. I will not die." Since he had made the first breakthrough in jade skin, Han Sen would not die even when buried in snow, let alone sleeping on snow. You will die like this. The woman frowned, pulled Han Sen up from the snow, and put him on her back. She lifted the body of the ghost-pawed ferret with her other hand and said as she walked, "So tired after killing such a small thing. Men are such useless creatures. Let me down. I can walk on my own." Han Sen felt both surprised and amused. This lady probably had nerves as thick as her figure. Relaxed. "I will carry you back to the shelter for free," the woman said thoughtlessly. Han Sen was too lazy to move in the first place. After hearing from the woman that there was a human shelter nearby, he decided to rest on her back, letting her carry him to the other side of the snow mountain. The lady was quite tall, almost like a man. It was hard to tell how old she was. Han Sen felt she should not be too old. Her fitness seemed quite ordinary as well. He thought her fitness index was probably less than 30. She should be a mutant evolver who had entered God's sanctuary not long ago, which explained her low fitness level. According to the statistics of the Alliance, 100 ordinary Geno points from Second God's Sanctuary could increase one's fitness by 8 to 10 points. 100 primitive Geno points could increase one's fitness by 15 to 20. 100 mutant Geno points could increase one's fitness by 25 to 30. And 100 sacred Geno points could increase one's fitness by 40 to 50. Although it was just a rough estimate and the actual statistics depended on personal situation, it almost always fell in this range. As long as Han Sen maxed out on ordinary Geno points and primitive Geno points, he would be able to increase his fitness index by 30. With his original fitness index of 70, he could break 100 in fitness. For ordinary people, it was not so easy to hit 100 in fitness. Even a sacred evolver started with a fitness level around 30. Even with ordinary, primitive, and mutant Geno points maxed out, a sacred evolver would not be able to reach 100 in fitness index, but must gain some sacred Geno points as well. It was even harder for the mutant evolvers. As for primitive evolvers, they were basically cannon fodder in Second God's Sanctuary. It was hard for them to kill even just an ordinary creature. Obviously, this woman did not have a prominent background. Relying on herself, she probably had as hard a time like Han Sen did when he was first in Steel Armor Shelter. Many people could not even reach 100 in their fitness index for their entire life, which was why they did not dare to go to Third God's Sanctuary and died of old age in the second. Even there were some people who would risk their life by going to Third God's Sanctuary without hitting 100 in fitness level. Most of them died from accidents. Only less than 1/1000 would survive. The reason that Han Sen worked hard to lay his foundation in First God's Sanctuary was not just to have a good time in Second God's Sanctuary. In Third and Fourth God's Sanctuary, he would need even stronger fitness in order to just survive. To go far, he must first establish a profound foundation. With a shaky beginning, his road would only become more and more difficult. The woman was obviously a talker. She was very outgoing, chatting with Han Sen while carrying him. By replying to her from time to time, Han Sen soon learned a lot. The woman was named Guan Tong, 29 years of age. She came to Second God's Sanctuary 3 or 4 years ago. Fortunately, she had the good luck to end up in a middle-sized shelter which had about 10,000 people without encountering any risks. However, the family of Guan Tong was quite ordinary, so it was quite hard for herself to evolve with mutant Geno points maxed out. In Second God's Sanctuary, her life was even more difficult. Until now, she still had not reached 30 in her fitness index. The shelter she was staying at was named Starwheel Shelter, the owner of which was Li Xingluan. When hearing the admiring tone in Guan Tong's voice when talking about Li Xingluan, Han Sen felt rather curious about Li Xingluan. After Guan Tong carried Han Sen and traveled past 2 mountains, Han Sen eventually saw Starwheel Shelter. What he saw surprised him completely. It was not because the shelter was marvelous. In fact, Starwheel Shelter was about the same as Han Sen's Goddess Shelter, so it should also be the shelter of an aristocrat's spirit originally. The reason Han Sen was surprised was that surrounding area of Starwheel Shelter was filled with creatures. Giant eagles were snapping at the shelter from the sky. Floods of beasts came toward the walls of the shelter. Dead bodies and blood turned the ground near the shelter into a graveyard. A creature taller than the walls of the shelter was hitting on the crumbling wall with its hammer like fists, trying to make a huge gap on the wall. The beast roars and human cries, and the clashing between blood and fire were the symphony of life and death. Broken body parts could be seen everywhere, from both humans and creatures. On the main battlefield in front of the gate of the shelter, a man wearing snow armor was wielding a long bronze sword, fighting a black ape, a silver two-headed bird, a unicorn beast, and a red serpentine. Fighting 4 creatures alone, he was not at any disadvantage, which made Han Sen quite surprised. The 4 creatures were obviously all sacred blood creatures. The man was able to fight all of them alone, blocking the main attacks of the creatures, which was why the shelter was still standing at this point. However, the current situation was not promising. There were so many creatures that they hit the Starwheel shelter like waves of the ocean. Among them, 2 other sacred blood creatures were blocked by 2 strong evolvers in the shelter. However, other creatures still caused a great damage to humans who were defending the shelter. Everyone knew that if they teleported back to the Alliance at this point, they could never come back here after the creatures occupied the shelter. At that time, they would never be able to teleport back to God's sanctuary again. That was the reason why everyone was still guarding the shelter with their lives. However, they still fell short compared to the fearless and endless creatures. There was no telling until when they could hold their posts. Behind the creatures, a young lady with silver hair and eyes, and a silver staff in her hand was standing on top of the head of a creature that looked like either a snake or dragon, watching everything happen coldly. Beside the young lady, groups of various creatures launched continuous and fierce attacks at the shelter as she wielded her staff. Either the death of creatures or humans could not change the looks of the young lady. Royal spirit. Seeing the young lady's look, Han Sen exclaimed inwardly. He did not know whether his luck was good or bad. After all this time, he eventually ended up in a human shelter, which, however, was under the attack of a royal spirit who was controlling more than 7 sacred blood creatures. Obviously, she was not someone easy to deal with. Boom! Guan Tong threw Han Sen and the body of the ferret on the snow, running toward the shelter down the hill. "What are you doing? You are committing suicide by going there now," Han Sen exclaimed at the tall figure of Guan Tong. "We could not lose the shelter. There is no other teleport device nearby. We will all be doomed if we lose the shelter, so I have to go help," Guan Tong replied without turning her head, rushing into the shelter. Han Sen frowned slightly and cast his glance at the royal spirit. The only way to save the shelter was to kill the royal spirit. Otherwise, groups of creatures would flood in endlessly, and humans would lose the shelter sooner or later. It was almost impossible to see such bloody battles in First God's sanctuary, so it would be hard for someone who had never experienced this to imagine the scary scenario of creatures attacking a shelter. Even Han Sen, who had witnessed lots of deaths, could not help shivering. All he needed right now was a set of strong bow and arrow. If he had them, he could shoot the royal spirit dead right away, which will lead to the collapse of the creatures. However, he did not have any weapon he could use, not to mention bow and arrow. Thinking of weapons, Han Sen immediately took a look at his mind, which was his Sea of Soul. His newly gained Ghost Pod Ferret Beast Soul was lying there. Han Sen took a look at the Ghost Pod Ferret and became excited. Type of Beast Soul of Sacred Blood Ghost Pod Ferret. Weapon. With his thought changing, the weapon of the Beast Soul immediately appeared on his hand. 3 purple claws of a foot long suddenly appeared on Han Sen's right hand, gleaming with poison. It looked somewhat like the adamantium claws of Wolverine and X-Men. With these claws, Han Sen suddenly felt he had an opportunity. Approaching the battlefield, he observed the situation quietly. Lots of creatures were guarding the royal spirit, so he probably only had one opportunity if he wanted to launch a sneak attack on the royal spirit. Any tiny mistake would render his efforts in vain. No matter how fast Han Sen wanted to kill her, he had to examine the battlefield carefully first with patience and calculate all the possibilities. Guan Tong rushed back to the shelter. However, as she stood on top of the walls, she felt helpless watching the creatures attacking the shelter like floods. In addition, everyone guarding the shelter was feeling hopeless. The creature was endless, as if they could never be wiped out. Many people were already sore from the killing, but more creatures threw themselves at humans non-stop. Boom! The creature taller than even the wall eventually managed to break the wall open, and a large number of creatures started to enter. People guarding the shelter became desperate and pale. Without the structure protecting them, it would be even harder for them to defend themselves from the creatures. It was almost certain that Starwheel Shelter would fall. Retreat. Everyone teleport out of God's sanctuary immediately, commended Li Xingluan loudly as he fought for sacred blood creatures. He then wielded his long sword fiercely and killed dozens of creatures ahead of him. Although no one was willing to give up on the shelter, they did not have any choice. Although it might be hard for them to teleport back to God's sanctuary in the future, survival was the first priority. People started to retreat from the shelter in an organized manner. These people were not a mob, which showed the good job their leader did. However, in front of absolute strength, no one had any solutions. The army of the royal spirit was so much stronger than them that no matter how strong Li Xingluan was, fighting for sacred blood creatures and killing endless mutant and primitive creatures, he could not save the day. All sorts of negative emotions like helplessness, reluctance, anger, and depression weighed heavy on the heart of every single person in Starwheel Shelter. People did not even want to speak. They slowly retreated to the teleport device inside the shelter, speechless. Even the evolvers who were in charge of protecting others from behind could not make a sound in the fight, as if their throats were stuffed with something better. Speechless retreat. It was an ending that no one was willing to take. Retreat meant failure, and even losing the shelter forever. After the shelter was occupied, unless someone else came to wipe out all the creatures in Starwheel Shelter, they would be committing suicide if they teleported back. Kill. Li Xingluan was gleaming like a piece of jade. His long sword danced like wind, protecting half of the wall from the creatures, buying others more time to retreat. Suddenly, a figure rushed out from the foot of the mountain nearby to the silver-haired spirit hiding behind the army of the creatures quickly, giving rise to roars among the creatures. Someone is there? Someone noticed the strange turbulence among the creatures and glanced that way. They suddenly saw a man throwing himself at the royal spirit in the back. Ah, there is really a person there. How come he went there? That place is filled with creatures led by the spirit. Is he trying to get himself killed? Idiot. He is trying to kill the royal spirit. How is that even possible? She is the royal spirit with the sacred blood snake and thousands of other creatures guarding her. It would be impossible to approach her. Possible or not, he has balls for going there. I admire him. People who had been feeling depressed couldn't help crying out loud, wishing they were right there with him. Momentarily, that person had already rushed into the thousands of creatures surrounding the spirit, going toward her. Everyone's heart leapt. Even those people who were retreating couldn't help slowing down. Although they did not believe there would be a miracle, they could not help wishing there were one. It is him. Guantong saw who it was and explained. The man throwing himself at the royal spirit was the man who he saved from snow. Watching Han Sen entering the group of creatures, people had complex feelings. The moment when Han Sen threw himself at the royal spirit, the silver-haired spirit had a strange look in her eyes. She waved the staff, and all of a sudden, the sacred blood creatures attacking the shelter turned to attack Han Sen. Stop them. We cannot let them go back. Looking at Han Sen, who was risking his life, Li Xingluan was determined. He stopped the two-headed bird with his sword, and then stood in the way of the other sacred blood creatures that were going back as if he was crazy. At Li Xingluan's command, the evolvers who were giving up on the shelter immediately joined the fight without even thinking. The other two strong evolvers went back to fight the two sacred blood creatures that were about to turn back. Boom! Li Xingluan took a hit from the unicorn beast with his bronze sword and fell, leaving a long furrow on the ground. However, he was still holding his sword tight with the blood at the corner of his mouth. It was fine for him to battle for sacred blood creatures when he was able to move around. At this point, he had to stand in their way and take all their attacks head-on, and he could not bear it no matter how strong he was. No matter who you are, kill the spirit for me, please. Spitting blood, Li Xingluan slashed his sword to stop the red serpentine that was trying to go back. On the other side, Han Sen was already deep in the siege of creatures. After absorbing the red crystal, Han Sen had gained stronger brain power, although the ability to move things was not that useful. The countless details of the entire battlefield were clearly projected in Han Sen's mind, making it easier for him to make a precise judgment. When he made the first step, Han Sen had calculated his route to go forward and all the possibilities on the way, including the reactions of different creatures. Although it could not be 100% accurate, Han Sen knew it was the best route he could have chosen. The evolvers fighting were all paying attention to the figure deep into the creature army, wishing for the impossible to happen. At this point, Han Sen's performance had just begun. The moment he sent himself into the group of creatures, the entire battlefield had become a huge chessboard for Han Sen. Every single creature, including the royal spirit herself, was pieces on the chessboard for Han Senator, and his end goal was to take out the piece represented by the royal spirit. Those fierce creatures were attacking Han Sen, but his eyes were extremely calm. Moving his legs rapidly, he was going forward according to the route he had designed. Tempting, misleading, or killing directly, Han Sen could not be stopped by the group of creatures. In the impossible situation, Han Sen made a possible route which led to the royal spirit. The scenario was incredible in other people's eyes. Thousands of creatures were simply a sea of heads without even a gap. In others' eyes, unless all the creatures were wiped out, it was impossible to approach the royal spirit. However, after Han Sen went there, he moved left and right at an incredible speed. Flashing his right hand, one creature after another were bleeding heavily and many were beheaded, which was not even the best part. The best part was that initially many creatures were actually in Han Sen's way, but for some reason, they suddenly moved their bodies to let him pass. In the crazy group of beasts, Han Sen was like a butterfly dancing solo. Although he was in a terrible situation, the elegance and beauty of his figure were not affected. In the most incredible way, thousands of gruesome creatures failed to stop Han Senator through a huge army. Han Sen managed to go up to the royal spirit's mount, the dragon snake. Many people were completely dumbstruck. It was like a thrilling magic show. The blood and the strange rhythm made one's heart leapt with the beat. Boom! The moment Han Sen was in front of the dragon snake, the silver-haired young lady had a cold smile on her face. The rock underneath Han Sen suddenly split. A black gargoyle looking like a ghost emerged from underground, its cold hands grabbing at Han Sen's legs which were right in front of its face. Almost at the same time, the giant dragon snake opened its mouth to swallow Han Sen. Damn it! The spirit is so wicked that she hid a sacred blood gargoyle underneath. That is the end of it. People who had seen some hope suddenly lost faith. Attacked by the sacred blood gargoyle, snapped by the dragon snake, and surrounded by fierce creatures, the person had nowhere to go. Cold light flashed in Han Sen's eyes. He suddenly jumped up, disregarding the gargoyle and throwing himself into the mouth of the giant dragon snake. Evolvers who were watching this scene couldn't help feeling sad. Their hope was almost all gone. This was a desperate move. However, the dragon snake was so big that it could simply swallow the man. The claws were so small that they were not enough to threaten this giant creature. Even if he could hit the creature, the cut would only be a scratch to its gigantic body. Maybe he would not even be able to break the snakeskin. As Han Sen was about to be swallowed by the dragon snake, his body suddenly paused in the air and rose a couple of feet. Stepping on the snake's nose with his right foot, he rose higher at an incredible speed to the same height as the royal spirit standing on the head of the snake. The royal spirit blinked and moved her staff slightly. Silver light covered her whole body, turning her into a warrior covered in silver armor and her staff into a slim silver sword. Without any expression, her delicate fingers moved, and the slim silver sword was stabbed to Han Sen's forehead like a lightning bolt.
Fast, incredibly fast.
There was no time for him to react. Behind Han Sen, the sacred blood gargoyle appeared like a phantom, its hands grabbing at Han Sen's legs from behind. The snake also spit out its tongue looking like a trident to hit Han Sen's waist. In other people's eyes, Han Sen was faced with a death trap. However, from Han Sen's perspective, this was his opportunity. All the planning, the careful design, and the performance were for this moment. His heart thumping like thunder, Han Sen used heresy mantra to its full. Overload made his bones squeak. Reed armor appeared on Han Sen's body as the ruby crown appeared on his head. His black short hair became blonde and long, dancing in the air like crazy. His eyes, which were now golden, were completely emotionless. As he shape-shifted into the Fairy Queen, everything became slower in Han Sen's eyes. The sneak attack of the sacred blood gargoyle, the tongue blade of the snake, the slim silver sword of the royal spirit, and the countless creatures throwing themselves at him, all became a holographic image in Han Sen's brain, even the slightest details of which could be learned by him. Without moving away, Han Sen, who was now at his best, thrust his chest to the slim sword of the silver-haired spirit girl without hesitation, letting the sword pierce his chest and approaching the spirit at the same time. They were so close to each other that Han Sen's face was about to touch hers. Han Sen smiled, waving his right hand and cutting the 3 purple claws into the pretty head of the spirit girl. With her incredulous look, her head was cut into 4 parts. Boom! The figure of the spirit girl became twinkles of lights and disappeared. Suddenly, the entire battlefield seemed to freeze. Both humans and creatures stopped a beat. All eyes were on the gorgeous figure. The red armor and ruby crown were shining in the sun so bright that people could hardly look at them. The injury on Han Sen's chest had stopped bleeding. Although it was a decision he made at the moment he saw the spirit girl shifting into a warrior, Han Sen executed it perfectly with his peerless control of his body and timing. Although the slim silver sword pierced his body, Han Sen managed to avoid all his inner organs. It stabbed him in the gap between his heart and lung. In addition, his heart was the toughest among all inner organs because of the heresy mantra. It was probably even tougher than his muscles, which was why Han Sen dared to take such a great risk. It looked very scary, but the danger was not so great and the result was great. If it was a normal fight, the spirit might be guarded. Han Sen could not even be her match. Without any special tactics, it would be impossible for him to kill her so fast. Sneak attacks were focused on plots. Without any sacrifice, it would be impossible for someone weaker to beat someone stronger. After Han Sen killed the royal spirit, the army of creatures lost their leadership and became a mess. The evolvers of Starwheel Shelter roared in excitement, attacking proactively instead of defending themselves. Momentarily, the situation was completely reversed. The army of creatures was defeated, scattering around, while the evolvers started to chase the creatures falling behind. Disregarding his injury in the chest, Han Sen launched the strike at the sacred blood gargoyle closest to him. The spirit could resurrect in spirit stone, so there was nothing left for Han Senator. If he could not take the opportunity to kill 1 or 2 sacred blood creatures, he would be risking his life for no reason. Being attacked by Han Sen, the sacred blood gargoyle did not manage to run away and had to fight him. Its stone-like hands continued to hit the ghost pod claws, while the claws were only able to leave shallow marks on the gargoyle's skin. However, the blood flowing from those marks gradually turned purple and black. Ghost pod claws were extremely toxic, which almost defeated Jadeskin. Obviously, this gargoyle did not have any ability to cure toxins.
Han Sen bekam overjoyed.
The toxins of the ferret stayed on its beast soul weapon, which would be extremely helpful for him to hunt sacred blood creatures in the future. Poison was something very useful, but there were not that many beast souls with this feature. When Han Sen was feeling excited, the gargoyle raised its head and roared. Its stone-like skin suddenly contracted and turned into the color of steel, looking much tougher. Unexpectedly, it became a berserk creature. Clank, clank, clank. Han Sen made 3 strikes in a row and failed to cut Gargoyle's skin. The gargoyle did not linger and ran away immediately. It was not easy for Han Sen to have an opportunity to kill a sacred blood creature, so there was no way he would let it go. Han Sen started to chase the gargoyle as fast as his legs would carry him. Without running too far, he saw the skin of the gargoyle showing a color of purple. Feeling excited, Han Sen knew that the gargoyle was not cured from the toxins earlier, although it became berserk. Now Han Sen were even more driven to chase after the creature. This gargoyle was most likely doomed. Now the only thing Han Sen worried was that if it died of poison, its meat might not be edible anymore. However, Han Sen was not afraid of it either. As long as it did not affect the increase of Geno points, he was fine with it. When the evolvers from the shelter came over, Han Sen had already run far, chasing the gargoyle. Except for Guantong, no one knew who Han Sen was. Does everyone know who the friend killing the spirit was? The creatures either run away or got killed. After everything was settled, Li Xingluan raised his voice and asked. Everyone in the crowd looked to each other, feeling confused. They also would like to know who that person was, saving Starwheel Shelter by killing the spirit alone. His bravery and power to behead the queen among thousands of creatures deeply impressed everyone. Do we have such a strong man in Starwheel Shelter? I don't think I have ever seen him. He seems so young. I want to bear his baby. Guantong flushed, failing to make a sound. She wanted to say that she knew Han Sen, but then she found that she did not even know what his name was or where he came from. Although she opened her mouth, she could not say a word. Seeing that no one knew the person, Li Xingluan did not hesitate to summon his mount, running in the direction where Han Sen went. I must meet such a great character, even just to learn his name. Li Xingluan urged the horse to run fast. Fortunately, the footprints of the gargoyle were clearly imprinted on the way, pointing the right direction for him. After Han Sen chased the berserk gargoyle on the vast ice field for more than 300 miles, the berserk creature eventually lost its energy because of the poison. Han Sen went up and wielded his claws at it, beheading the creature after more than 100 strikes. He only succeeded because the creature was too weak after being poisoned. Otherwise, even a sacred blood weapon could not cut its skin, which had turned so tough after it became berserk. Berserk sacred blood creature evil gargoyle killed. Beast soul of berserk evil gargoyle gained. Meat inedible. The voice he heard almost made Han Sen laugh out of happiness. Lady Luck was still on his side. After coming to Second God's Sanctuary, he gained a beast soul from each of the 3 sacred blood creatures he had killed. His luck was simply peerless. Evil gargoyle, I wish it is armor. With a weapon and armor, I would not need to worry about anything. Han Sen quickly looked to his sea of soul and saw the evil gargoyle squatting quietly. Type of beast soul of berserk sacred blood evil gargoyle. Glyph. Another glyph. After Han Sen saw it, he was dazed for a while. He still hadn't figured out what was the use of the evil-blooded condor beast soul he gained last time. Unexpectedly, this sacred blood evil gargoyle was also a glyph. Han Sen summoned the evil gargoyle, and a tattoo in the color of tungsten and shape of a ghost suddenly appeared on his body, looking gruesome. After the tattoo emerged, Han Sen saw that the skin all over his body gleamed like tungsten. Han Sen summoned the ghost pod claws to cut at his own arm and heard clanks of metal on metal. His metal-like arm was only left with some white marks, not even broken. Haha, this is great. Fantastic. After cutting a few times, Han Sen saw the result was the same, which made him feel overjoyed. This berserk evil gargoyle glyph was much better than the evil-blooded condor glyph, the use of which was still unclear. This glyph was the equivalence of a terrific defense hyper-geno art. Using this glyph, he could still use beast soul armor, which was quite amazing. Although Han Sen did not gain beast soul armor as he expected, he was even more pleased with the result. He took shelter from the wind and took out the ghost pod ferret in his backpack. He carefully boned and skinned ferret, cleaned it with snow, sliced the tender meat, dipped it in sauce, and put it into his mouth. He was on a vast ice field where not even grass could be spotted, so naturally there was no way to make a fire. Luckily, the meat of the ghost pod ferret was very sweet and tasty, without any foul smell or taste. In fact, it was extremely good with sauces, comparable to sashimi. Meat of ghost pod ferret eaten. 1 sacred geno point gained. Hearing the voice ringing over and over, Han Sen was very pleased. Roughly speaking, 2 sacred geno points could increase his fitness index by 1 point. If this ferret could give him 10 sacred geno points, his fitness index would be increased by 5. After eating a small part of the ferret, Han Sen suddenly saw a ride coming over on the ice field. To his surprise, it was the man fighting 4 sacred blood creatures in Starwheel Shelter earlier. Han Sen did not know why the man would be here. As he was puzzled, he saw the man examining the spot where Han Sen killed the evil gargoyle and tracing the footsteps to him. Han Sen suddenly became alerted, watching the man running his way and approaching him. Friend, do not get the wrong idea. I did not mean you harm by tracking you down, but only wanted to make a friend. Seeing Han Sen, Li Xingluan became happy and told Han Sen why he was here. If you just want to thank me, Then it's not necessary, said Han Sen. If I will only want to thank you, I did not need to chase you for more than 300 miles, Li Xingluan said in a clear voice. What are you trying to do then? Han Sen looked at Li Xingluan, feeling curious. It is hard to see someone I like, and I do not want to miss a friend, Li Xingluan said seriously. You could not make someone your friend by talking, said Han Sen after eating another piece of meat. But I first need to know you. If I don't know you, strangers can never become friends. That is true. Li Xingluan sat down opposite Han Sen, and the two started chatting. After a while, Han Sen felt this person was quite interesting. He was gallant, intelligent, and humorous, the kind of person that easily lets others put their guard down. Although Han Sen was vigilant, he could not help feeling impressed by his knowledge and manner. This person was definitely from a prominent family. Thanks to Li Xingluan, Han Sen had a general grasp of the situation at this place. On this ice field, there were as many human shelters as 20 to 30. However, most of them were shelters taken from squire spirits and knight spirits. There were only 3 shelters that were taken from aristocrat spirits, and each of the 3 shelters was managed by a different person. The 3 persons represented the 3 largest forces on the ice field. Other smaller shelters were almost all under the control of the 3 forces, and Starwheel Shelter managed by Li Xingluan was one of the 3 largest shelter on the ice field. In addition, there was that shelter of the royal spirit, blocking the way between the ice field and outside. Although the situation in this place was much better than Han Sen's goddess shelter, it was still an area relatively desolate, not connected to the vast population of humans. Li Xingluan had always been wanting to take down the royal spirit shelter and expand the hunting area. Otherwise, the resources were limited in this area, which made it hard for him to max out on sacred Geno points. However, depending on the ability of Starwheel Shelter alone, there was no way they could take down the royal spirit shelter. In addition, human shelters on this ice field had been competing against each other for years, so there were lots of grudges between them, making it hard for them to work together to conquer the royal spirit shelter. Although Li Xingluan had been trying to urge all the shelters to unite since he took over the Starwheel Shelter, the grudge and hatred that had accumulated for centuries were not that easy to be resolved. Han Sen admired Li Xingluan's strategy and way of thinking quite a lot, so he agreed that he would help if Li Xingluan could persuade the other 2 shelters to conquer the royal spirit shelter together. Han Sen knew his own strength very well. Although he had killed the royal spirit once, it was a sneak attack, which would only work for the first time. Next time, the royal spirit would be guarded. If he fought the royal spirit one-on-one, face-to-face, he might not be her match. In addition, there were a lot of sacred blood creatures in the royal spirit. Han Sen could cope with 1 or 2 of them. If there were more, he had to run for his life. Therefore, there was no way he could conquer the royal spirit shelter on his own. If Li Xingluan could unite the 3 forces to conquer the royal spirit shelter, Han Sen would not miss the opportunity to take part in it. Moreover, as long as he could get the spirit stone, he would be able to gain the allegiance from the royal spirit for sure, which was the most valuable thing in the royal spirit. Han Sen had also learned that the creatures in this area were almost all split up by the 3 large forces. In addition, there were not many creatures in the area to begin with. Therefore, it would be hard for him to hunt other sacred blood creatures. To increase his Geno points in a short amount of time was out of the question. Han Sen thought about it and stopped hunting. He followed Li Xingluan back to the Starwheel Shelter and teleported back to the Alliance using the teleport device inside the shelter. The Ghost Pod Ferret gave him 10 sacred Geno points as he expected. With the 2 sacred Geno points he already had, Han Sen now had 12 sacred Geno points. With such gains, Han Sen was very satisfied with this trip. Initially, he did not have much hope for hunting an edible sacred blood creature, which was completely a surprise. Since he could not increase his Geno points in a short amount of time, Han Sen decided not to hunt anymore. Before the military contest began, he would like to focus on practicing the techniques written in Dongxian Sutra. After the fight against the royal spirit, Han Sen had some new understandings of the techniques in Dongxian Sutra, which he hoped to reinforce through lots of sparring and practice. Han Sen thought about it and logged into the official Skynet platform of the Alliance. Before he became an evolver, he could not enter the evolver section on the official platform, which was why he chose to go to Gladiator. Now with the official identity as Evolver, he could register at the official platform to fight Evolvers from all over the Alliance. In addition, the official platform had a benefit. Although the account information on the official platform was private and was protected by law, the marks of aristocracy would show when someone entered the platform. Aristocrats with different titles were most likely matched with opponents with the same title. Han Sen was a sacred blood aristocrat, which would be marked next to his account on the official platform. This way, the majority of his opponents would be sacred blood aristocrats, same as him, and a small part of his opponents would be other people with good record. That meant it was easy for Han Sen to meet Oster players on this platform, which was why Han Sen gave up the gladiator and chose the official platform instead. When registering, Han Sen thought about it and used the name of Dollar. However, after he entered the ID name, he saw it had already existed. Han Sen then added some words and changed it into I am Dollar, which still could not be used. Han Sen tried a couple of times, but even $95.27 was registered as well. Feeling quite upset, Han Sen wrote Kill Dollar in his ID name, which was eventually usable. After entering the virtual platform, in front of Han Sen's chest there was a shiny purple badge in the shape of a shield, which represented the identity of sacred blood aristocrats. Anyone could tell he was a sacred blood aristocrat at first sight, so there were a lot of envious glances cast his way. Although at this day and age, there were much more sacred blood evolvers than there were before, the percentage of sacred blood evolvers was still low. Han Sen chose to be randomly matched and was soon matched with someone. Seeing there was a sacred blood badge on the chest of his opponent as well, Han Sen felt quite pleased. Wang Dongyun checked out his opponent and found the ID name was Kill Dollar. Wang Dongyun curled his lips and felt even more amused when seeing his record was 0 win and 0 loss. Kill Dollar? A newbie like you does not even deserve to be killed by Dollar. Wang Dongyun licked his lips, wondering how he could teach this newbie a lesson to show him he should be more careful with the ID name he used. Dollar was a celebrity, so you could fashion your name after him. But don't take yourself so seriously. Kill Dollar my ass. Wang Dongyun became a sacred blood evolver in recent years as well, so he knew the name of Dollar, who was so famous that it was hard for him not to know. Wang Dongyun was quite a fan of Dollar's, so he was even more upset when seeing this ID. After the fight began, Wang Dongyun did not hesitate to use the explosive punch that he was best at, ready to kill this arrogant newbie that dared to insult Dollar. However, when he threw half a punch, he suddenly saw his opponent throwing a fist at him as well. Although the strike was not that fast, Wang Dongyun had to retreat. Otherwise, before he could hit his opponent, he would be punished first. Taking back his fist sullenly, Wang Dongyun stepped back at the same time, preparing to kick the newbie's ass later. However, after this punch, Wang Dongyun was shocked to find that he never had another opportunity to make an attack. The strikes from his opponent never stopped, making him feel suffocated. It felt he had to dodge or block every punch from his opponent, and there was no opportunity for him to fight back. As he blocked and dodged, Wang Dongyun ended up on the edge of the battlefield without even noticing it. With nowhere to go, he was finished off. Wang Dongyun could not believe that he was not able to make a single punch facing a newbie. Unable to accept this kind of result, he challenged his opponent again quickly. His opponent clicked yes. Although Wang Dongyun was trying to take the initiative this time around, he quickly ended up in the same situation as the last time, unable to fight back at all. Wang Dongyun sent an invite again, while his opponent chose to reject him this time. Wang Dongyun insisted, but his opponent had already entered another fight, obviously with a new match. Wang Dongyun searched for the room of his opponent and chose to watch. He would like to see why that person was able to beat him and why in such a strange way. Neither the person's speed nor strength was that great. However, he was beaten completely, which made him feel reluctant to accept. Wang Dongyun checked Kill Dollar's opponent, who was named I Am Swordmaster, with more than 1,000 wins and 800 losses. That was way record. Since this person was a veteran on the platform, he was definitely not bad. The moment I Am Swordmaster moved, Wang Dongyun knew he was right. This person's sword skills were fierce and fast. Judging by his moves, Wang Dongyun could tell that this person had put a lot of effort into practicing his sword skills. If Wang Dongyun was against this person, he he could probably only choose to back off and defend himself under such sword skills. However, the choice of Kill Dollar made Wang Dongyun stare his eyes wide open. Kill Dollar did not go back at all, but went forward, punching at I Am Sword Master. The punch was neither fast nor fierce. In Wang Dongyun's eyes, I Am Sword Master could definitely cut Han Sen with his sword, but I Am Sword Master chose to retreat, dodging the punch from his opponent. Later on, Wang Dongyun felt like he was watching a playback of his own match. I Am Sword Master made the exact same choices as himself, suppressed by Kill Dollar until the last minute, unable to fight back. No way. No way in hell. Wang Dongyun almost jumped up and yelled. He could not understand why I Am Sword Master would choose to retreat in the beginning, nor did he understand how I Am Sword Master lost in the end. From his perspective, there were so many opportunities to fight back. In addition, the punches of Kill Dollar were far from perfect. In fact, they were even quite flawed. If I Am Sword Master was able to take advantage of any of the flaws, he could have turned the situation around, which he failed to do. Maybe I Am Sword Master is too weak? Yes, it is definitely so. Wang Dongyun thought it must be the swordman's problem that he could not utilize any of the flaws. Although his sword skills were impressive, he must not be that intelligent. However, Wang Dongyun completely forgot that he acted exactly the same way. He did not feel he was too weak and did not take his loss too well. I Am Sword Master did not take his loss well either, sending another invite to Kill Dollar. He had the exact same thought as Wang Dongyun. However, Han Sen did not agree to fight him again. He was practicing the techniques in Dongxin Sutra, so it would make little sense for him to fight someone he had defeated already. What he needed was endless new challenges against opponents using various skills. After launching the sneak attack on the Royal Spirit, Han Sen had a deeper understanding of the techniques in Dongxin Sutra. The techniques did not need to be perfect, and there was no victory against overwhelming odds in its true sense. If one beat someone much stronger than oneself, one was merely using one's strength to tackle the stronger person's weakness. How to hit his opponent's weakness with his own strength was Han Sen's main focus at the point. It would be the best if he could be stronger than his opponent. If not, he had to show his strength against his opponent's weakness, making himself the stronger one, which was the correct way to go. What Han Sen was practicing currently was to use calculation to match his strength with his opponent's weakness. Even if his opponent was stronger than him overall, he could be partially stronger and consume his opponent's strength in order to win in the end. Wang Dongyun insisted on watching Han Sen's fights one after another. Soon, he discovered that the reason that I Am Sword Master lost was not because he was weak, but that Kill Dollar was too strong. In a dozen fights, Kill Dollar crushed his opponents in the exact same way, which was so strange that he was about to question destiny. Is he Dollar himself? Wang Dongyun suddenly thought of a question. After Wang Dongyun had thought of it, he could no longer hold it back. Wang Dongyun then recorded all the following fights by Kill Dollar. After Wang Dongyun watched several rounds, Kill Dollar suddenly left the virtual platform. Wang Dongyun then watched what he recorded repeatedly. The more Wang Dongyun watched, the more incredulous he felt. In every fight, Kill Dollar was winning overwhelmingly, leaving his opponent no chance to fight back. This guy is very likely Dollar himself. Wang Dongyun felt more and more excited. Although there were a lot of master fighters and evolvers, he could not think of anyone else other than Dollar who would name himself that. However, Wang Dongyun was not sure whether that was true. He hesitated and uploaded his recordings to the official forum with the title, Dollar is Back? Crushing it all. Because there had not been any news about Dollar in a long time, the video did not attract too much attention in the beginning. However, one person had always been paying attention to the news of Dollar, which was the host Fong Mingquan. Currently, Fong Mingquan was already the top host of Washing Station. Almost all the shows he hosted had great ratings. One of his recent programs had a rating over 100 million in the entire alliance for his first episode, which was definitely among the top shows. Compared to his old days, Fong Mingquan was having a great time, enjoying the life as a celebrity. However, Fong Mingquan had never forgotten about Dollar, who made his career, constantly looking for news of Dollar. Unfortunately, Han Sen had not used the identity of Dollar recent years. Even if Fong Mingquan wanted to do something, he could not since he had no news of Dollar at all. This day, Fong Mingquan searched for dollar on the Skynet as usual, looking for the latest news. As he was searching, Fong Mingquan thought, dollar, you should have been in the second god sanctuary for 2 or 3 years. With what you got, you should have gained a lot of Geno points already. Come on, it's your time. Fong Mingquan suddenly saw the video named Dollar is Back, crushing it all, and clicked to watch. In recent years, he had seen lots of articles and videos with titles like this. Many of the titles were even more dramatic, such as The Truth About Dollar's Fall, The Mysterious Woman in His Bed, The Mystery of Dollar's Disappearance, A 4-Day-Long Sin, etc. However, none of them had any substantial constant. After watching the video, Fong Mingquan's face suddenly became grim. He was so excited that he was shivering. Although the person in the video used the face blur function and all he could see was his ID name, he had a feeling that this person was Dollar. After watching the video seriously, Fong Mingquan was quite surprised. Indeed, it is Dollar. Even among revolvers, he is the absolute top. I have never seen anything like this. Without any hesitation, Fong Mingquan edited the video into a more solid version, ready to show it during his showtime. Lu, make some arrangements to move the topic today to next episode. Fong Mingquan called his assistant. Lu felt puzzled about why Fong Mingquan would suddenly change the topic, which was something he had prepared for nearly a month. However, Fong Mingquan was so popular these days that even the station master was calling Fong Mingquan brother with a huge grin every time he saw Fong Mingquan. Fong Mingquan was totally authorized to change the topic without asking for approval. Mr. Fong Mingquan, what topic should we focus on in this episode? After making the arrangements, Lu asked Fong Mingquan. Dollar. Fong Mingquan only said one word. Fong Mingquan played the video in his show and announced the return of Dollar with thrilling words, which was a bomb among the evolvers in the Alliance. Many people started to discuss about it, given the hundreds of millions of audience Fong Mingquan had. Is it true? Is he really Dollar? His name is Kill Dollar. That is more like Dollar's enemy. These punches are so amazing. How did he do it? Dollar is so handsome, crushing it all. My king, you're eventually back. Please accept my allegiance. I've been waiting for so long. What king? He was not necessarily able to beat Lin Feng when he was unevolved. Not to mention he is now in Second God's Sanctuary. He has not been there for many years. How strong can he be? There are so many revolvers who could kill him. Fuck off. My Dollar is invincible anywhere he goes. What the heck do you know? Do not be so excited. It is obvious whether Dollar is strong or not. You can tell from the video that all his opponents were sacred blood aristocrats, but they were all defeated by Dollar. Exactly. The strength of my king is beyond doubt. Heck, I wish to see him fight again. After waiting for so long, I see my king again. Dollar, I want to have your baby. Oh, you must be a man. We are not even sure whether he is Dollar.
No rush.
It is the official platform, so we can all go check it out. It seems that he has fought a lot. Just like this, a large number of people flooded into the official platform, and many among them tried to send Dollar friend requests. When Han Sen logged into the platform again, he heard the notification sounds of friend requests ringing like a fire engine. Han Sen took a look and saw tens of millions of friend requests, which shocked him completely. He had no idea what had happened. However, there was no way for him to check all these requests, so he had to change his privacy setting to reject every friend request. Also, he chose not to accept any new friend request, and his world suddenly became quiet. What on earth happened? Han Sen looked at the news on the Skynet and found out what had happened. He felt both surprised and amused. In the same time, he felt Fong Mingquan must have some mysterious connection to him, being able to tell he was Dollar under such circumstances. Han Sen did not mean to explain and chose a random match. The moment he entered the fight, the observers in his room maxed out. There were so many people waiting to watch his fight, and they all clicked at the same time. Some had entered the room, while some were told the room was full.